I'm here today with Doniece Sandoval, the founder, and Kris Kepler, the Chief Program and Strategy Officer at LavaMaeX. They join me remotely from quarantine via Zoom. So thanks to both of you for being here today. And I'm going to start off with just asking Doniece to provide us a little backstory on the why of LavaMae. Why did you start it?
Sure. Well, I founded it in 2013, and sort of in the couple of years leading up to that, I had a sort of very life-changing experience. I was living in San Francisco in a neighborhood that was once the Western Addition and became NOPA after the city began to gentrify. And three of my neighbors, all African-American men in their 80s, got evicted over a period of about 2 years. And one by one, we watched as the same thing happened. They moved into their cars, had those eventually repossessed, and ended up on the streets. And every time we kept trying to connect them with services, and particularly housing. But the wait lists were so long that sadly, each one of them ended up dying on the streets. And that was so utterly devastating to me and my family. My background is not in working in social services. I'm marketing PR executive, but I decided I wanted to do something. And when I learned that there was this incredible lack of showers and toilets for people living in San Francisco, I thought maybe I could do something. And then I learned Muni was retiring old diesel buses. So light popped on in my head, and I thought, what if we could take those buses and do something good with them by converting them into showers and toilets on wheels for people who are unhoused. And so we launched our program in 2014 and had a tremendous response. Shortly afterwards, we really started seeing that our guests were running to us saying that they were having to run to 4 or 5 other places to get additional services. So we started thinking, why don't we bring more partners to the street? Project Homeless Connect was a partner of ours, was an advisor. And so I went and I said, I would love to take your model and marry it with ours and bring an array of services from showers, haircuts, and clothes to medical, dental, legal, and wrap it around community to create these powerful events. Along the road, one of the things that we learned in working with people was that the way that you treat them was almost more important than the service itself, right? So we coined this philosophy called radical hospitality, which is about treating people with extraordinary care. It's about meeting them and seeing them at their highest level. And 99% of the time, that is where they meet you back at. And it's about this incredible, powerful human-to-human connection. Here we are, all these years later, and a lot of changes have happened. The programs have grown. One of the things that we began to see last year was that in addition to our work, we were seeing communities pop up all over the world who were taking our model and running with it. And we began a while back to support them in various ways, which I'll let Kris talk about. But as we looked at what LavaMae was going to be in the future, because in January or so of last year, I quickly realized that we were going to hit our 2020 impact goal to serve 30,000 Californians 16 months ahead of schedule. So we began to think, with all of these things in motion and what's happening, what should our future consist of? And so we made a very strategic decision to shift our focus from direct service, although we still do direct service, to supporting more communities and teaching them how to do the work that we do, because sadly, access to hygiene is a crisis all over the world. And so we relaunched in January as LavaMaeX and shifted our programming, which Kris is now beautifully leading.
So I think before we turn to that point, over the last 5 years, Doniece, what would you say has been the largest impact of your efforts and the community's efforts? Because not only have you put together this wonderful nonprofit, but you've also put together wonderful partnerships, and you've brought a lot of volunteers, a lot of people, to the pop-up villages, et cetera.
Yeah, I would say that, probably our 2 most profound impacts are, 1, we raised awareness about an issue that was not on most people's radar. People think if you're unhoused, you need housing, you need food, you need clothes. But understanding the fact that access to showers and toilets was a dire crisis in most communities was something that really people didn't know about until LavaMae kind of emerged on the scene. So I think that was really important. The second is, as you mentioned, we're built from day one, rooted in collaboration and partnership, right? We recognize that one of the most powerful things we can do is to get people to participate in this effort, because it's going to take all of us. But that also, when you have an opportunity to actually meet and converse with, get to know people who are unhoused, what you find out is that they are more like you, like us, than they are different from us. And in breaking down the barriers, then you break down the myths around homelessness. And the more we can do that with people, the more we feel we can affect long-term, powerful change to end the crisis that is homelessness.
Thank you. So, Kris, I'm going to turn to you and have you kind of walk the audience through. So, we've got the accelerator and the whole DIY piece, and then your most recent project with the DIY hand washing.
Pandemic hit, we were seeing the increased need to offer, hand washing services on the streets. And so I did some research and found that even if you wanted to rent a large scale hand washing station, it was very expensive or not even available anymore. Or if you wanted to purchase this online, it was back ordered. So a coworker and I got out our sketch pad and sketched up some ideas. We purchased some of these parts. We put a prototype together and tested it out in Oakland around Lake Merritt. And that's how the program was born. And so our goal with this is not just to deploy these to communities, but in our backyard, which we're doing, but to also educate anybody to be able to do this, and by offering them things like a supply list, an instruction manual, and a video tutorial to help them do it. So the whole goal is to make these programs easily accessible and deployable in their communities so that they can serve people in a more effective way, especially around hand washing, which is such a critical need right now.
And you guys have a GoFundMe campaign going right now, and you're trying to raise.
We do, yes. And so part of what we're doing is, as I mentioned, we're deploying a few locally that we will be working with partners and encampment leads on. The other goal is to fundraise for replicators around the U.S. and the world to be able to fund them some money to be able to purchase the parts and to maintain and deploy the units. So the goal for us is really just to get these out in the world so that people can wash their hands and it's at this point it's a life-saving measure, which we think is really critical for hygiene and health.
Can I jump in here, George, and just say I wanted to piggyback what Kris said when she said our goal is to get these out into the world, right? So this is true of our hand washing stations, this is true of our mobile hygiene program, and this is true of our pop-up care villages, right? We are all about sharing our IP and making it accessible without cost to anyone. In fact, we attempt to bring resources to communities that don't have their own means to be able to produce these programs, whether it's the GoFundMe campaign, which is designed to raise $50,000 so that communities who can't afford to create one can get a stipend from us to, buy the materials and put them together. So it's really about, we recognize that we're not trying to sit on top of a hygiene empire. What we're trying to do is empower local communities, because we know local communities know best what they need and how to deliver it.
Yeah. And I would also say, we're really looking at these hand washing stations not just as a product that sits on the street, right? It really is a way for people to connect. So, you can educate people that are on the streets on how they need to wash their hands. You could give out hygiene kits around the hand washing stations. You could bring other partners with you to the streets to deliver medical help or other food, right? Bag lunches, things like that. So it's really a way to connect people to the community while still offering a very a critical service and bringing people together around it.
So that brings me to the other piece of the puzzle, which is I know that LavaMaeX has been working for years trying to diversify funding, and I just noticed that you had a wonderful strategic partnership with Unilever and their new program, The Right to Shower. Could you talk a little bit about that, and then how that is helping support the accelerator work?
Sure. Yeah. So the Right to Shower is a Unilever brand. that is an extremely socially conscious brand, and the Right to Shower is selling soaps and cleanser. And the great thing about this brand is that a portion of the proceeds go to funding replicators to provide access to hygiene. So the main mission and goal is to provide broader access to hygiene for everyone. And so it's a wonderful partnership because we can work with replicators, help fund them through the Right to Shower program to enable more hygiene to be on the streets. So when we first started last year with them, the main focus was on mobile hygiene and getting more showers on the streets. And now we're pivoting that program to also include funding for the hand washing stations. So the concept of hygiene is being broadened as we see the needs. So not just the showers, but the hand washing piece and all of that all wraps into this larger goal of providing hygiene worldwide.
So how can people get involved in supporting LavaMaeX's work?
You know, I think, well, you can donate. That would be really, you know, as Doniece mentioned, we are actively fundraising for hand washing stations so that we can fund other people to deploy worldwide. You know, we have a lot of, we have some providers now or individuals that have reached out to us that are creating masks and wanting to donate to us. So some of it is, what are your skill sets that you can actively leverage at home and be able to donate things like, you know, handmade masks to organizations. You know, I would also say reach out to your local legislature, right? A lot of it is about, you know, how are we as a larger community coming together to solve this problem and making sure that everybody is accountable and offering services and hygiene to people on the streets, because the situation is very dire. So making sure everybody knows how important that is and using your voice, right? Using your voice in the larger, for the larger issue.
And then final question for both of you, what do you see you know, as good things coming out of the pandemic itself to address our unhoused community members?
Well, I'll start. I'm, for one, am optimistic by all of the small acts of kindness, right? I think that this pandemic has kind of shaken us to our core, woken us up a little bit and said, you know, we've been living in these little bubbles, sort of very self-oriented. Maybe we've got our families in that bubble too, but beyond that, you know, that's the way we've been investing. And that's changed, whether it's like the neighbor to neighbor, literally, or as you think about where the crises are and how you support, right? So as Kris said, people making masks, people making shields, people donating, supporting their local restaurants, people checking on a neighbor to see if they have the food and the groceries they need. All of those kinds of things I think are, well, let me say, I don't know if I think, but I hope are changing our societal DNA, right? Because we had gotten very self-centered, and my pink sky vision is that we will emerge from this stronger, more connected than ever before, which will have this incredible ripple effect on issues that need to be solved, like homelessness.
Yeah, and I would also add to that, that, you know, we always talk about at LavaMae that everybody's 2 paychecks away, what is it, 2 paychecks in a crisis away from being unhoused, right? And so at this point, it is horrific because, as we all know, people are getting sick and many are losing their jobs. So it's reality now that this could happen to anyone, right? That they could be living on the streets because they cannot find a job in the next however many months, or, you know, in the short term. So it's an equalizer, right? It really makes you stop and think, what does humanity mean to me, and how would I want my neighbors to help me? Overall, in terms of other silver linings for LavaMaeX, I would say that we're really using this as an opportunity to innovate and to stay engaged with our guests and to track the needs week to week, and to say, how can we truly help them and innovate products and services around the immediate need, while thinking about what that means for the long term. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to come to the streets with new programs to increase access to hygiene.
So thank you, Doniece and Kris, for sharing your work today. We will make sure that viewers have your contact information, website, social media, so they can follow your work and get engaged. And please stay safe and healthy as we all go out through, work our way through this new normal. Thank you both for participating today.
Thank you,
Thank
George.
you. Thank you.
Consuelo Reyes Lopez is La Cocina's communications associate. Thanks so much for talking to us and letting us know how La Cocina is shifting your services to help food entrepreneurs. La Cocina is known for supporting and incubating food entrepreneurs, low-income food entrepreneurs, particularly women and people of color, with incubators and catering. And you told me earlier that food entrepreneurs have lost anywhere between 80% to 100% all of their profits. And so with us being now in the 6th or 7th week, as we're talking, of the shelter-in-place orders in San Francisco and the Bay Area, most restaurants are closed. So tell us a little bit about the situation, what has changed for La Cocina as a nonprofit, for the entrepreneurs and restaurants that you serve and support. What is the need, and how have you pivoted to serve the restaurants and entrepreneurs you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me and giving me an opportunity to talk about our work and talk about, how this pandemic has impacted our community. It certainly has really hurt and changed a lot for different communities, and I would say for ours in particular, in a couple different ways. So just a little bit of context in terms of, who we're serving and how much need there is, I guess, within our community, within our nonprofit. Over the past 15 years, La Cocina has incubated around 120 businesses. We've graduated around 60, and then we have around 33 brick and mortar locations across the Bay Area. Before the shelter in place hit, we were already definitely feeling that impact. Just entrepreneurs coming to us and, already seeing that financial hit. Events being canceled, catering opportunities being canceled, and, even La Cocina didn't feel that initial hit as much as our entrepreneurs, but definitely saw that coming, sort of anticipated it. We have a full-blown catering department. It's one of the ways in which we support our entrepreneurs that are incubated in our program by giving them a channel of sales, guiding them through the experience of catering as a part of growing their business. So yeah, immediately more than 70% of the businesses that are part of the La Cocina community felt the financial hit of losing 80 to 100% of their revenue, which, obviously is extremely difficult. But we definitely had to sort of pivot our priorities. And, the first thing that we did was set up an emergency relief fund that was seeded with $100,000 of our own money. And thankfully, that got a really, really positive feedback. And so at the end of March, we were able to give a relief stipend of $4,000 to 58 businesses, which is really amazing.
And that went towards paying rent, making payroll for a lot of those businesses, right? What was their reaction to receive this money?
Yeah. So it's a relief stipend essentially for anyone who qualified in our program, and we made sure to, make that sort of grant accessible to as many entrepreneurs as possible. Can be used for personal living expenses. We trust our entrepreneurs in our community to understand and know where they need to spend that money the most. And so, it was a really beautiful, sort of overwhelming sense of like hope and joy to sort of see that reaction. One of our entrepreneurs literally thought that we were mispaying him, like it was like an overpayment of some sort, because it was just much more than he anticipated we would be able to offer. And I'm sure it was it was very much in the beginning of when all of this happened, and just compared to the relief that is being offered at the federal level, which is one, a lot of our entrepreneurs aren't able to access that relief, and two, is very minimal. I think it was just like very shocking to sort of see that. And I think, like, when I think about how much we were able to raise and how much it meant to our entrepreneurs, they're so wonderful and they're so sweet, and they're like, thank you, La Cocina, thank you, La Cocina staff. And I'm certainly very proud of my team for being able to react so quickly and shift our priorities. But really, the entrepreneurs are the ones that made this happen, in my opinion. I mean, we were able to raise that much money with the help of foundations and a lot of generous donors, but a lot of just public support. We got a really tremendous positive reaction on social media. And that reaction is from like our entrepreneurs being so loved in our community. They make the Bay Area so delicious, so vibrant. People love our entrepreneurs, and I think that's what was able to fuel that fund and make that happen.
So that just that one stipend, that relief fund, may have been the difference for so many of these entrepreneurs between staying open, paying rent, personal expenses, etc. And when we talk about your entrepreneurs, these are restaurants and food service businesses that are so multicultural, so representative of the San Francisco Bay Area, and the kind of food that is really unique to be able to access and receive and kind of get a taste of that culture for so many of us. So besides offering the stipend to allow these entrepreneurs and businesses to keep going, La Cocina is doing something that benefits customers too. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the other sort of main way we're supporting our entrepreneurs, we realize that, the fund is definitely something that it's like a short-term Band-Aid that can alleviate a lot of the financial burden that was felt initially. But ultimately, these businesses, a lot of them shut down immediately, had to unfortunately lay off their staff. And then eventually were able to sort of reopen and start doing takeout or curbside pickup. A lot of businesses now are doing like their own sort of like food box meal program. Really, the creativity that has come from this community is really outstanding and delicious. And so one way we have been supporting entrepreneurs and promoting that end, before I get to kind of what La Cocina is doing, is we created a Google site that kind of lists all the different entrepreneurs that are open, that are providing takeout, how to easily access that, the links to the menu, and then also like GoFundMes. A lot of these entrepreneurs, like I mentioned earlier, are obviously very concerned about their staff and being able to make sure that they're okay. And so they've started personal GoFundMe, so it links to that. Some people are selling merch, just ways that people can directly support those entrepreneurs. But another way that we're sort of bringing the community together, and then also kind of allowing our community to do what they love the most, which is feed everyone, is by creating a La Cocina community food box. This was, started by our culinary director at La Cocina. Our program team has been working tirelessly to find creative ways in supporting our entrepreneurs at this time. Essentially, what this food box is it brings together 10 entrepreneurs that prepare fresh food. It can be packaged food entrepreneurs, businesses that have brick and mortar locations, some of our participants that still haven't opened up brick and mortar locations, and they're coming together and creating like a delicious food box. It's tamales and momos and, moringa chips and, chocolate truffles, and just a variety of things of deliciousness that can feed our community that is also going through like their own, we're all going through our own collective crisis of like having to stay home and, just live our day-to-day lives and like feed ourselves. And so being able to provide that from our community, I think, is a really beautiful thing. And our entrepreneurs have very much enjoyed it. And that has brought in actually quite, not enough. It doesn't compare to having to completely shut down your business, but has brought in a little bit of revenue for the 10 businesses that are part of each box weekly. So that's been really amazing.
And people can find out about the delivery box on your social media and website, right?
Yeah, so we completely reshifted our website. If you go to lacocinasf.org, you can pretty much learn immediately what we're doing in response to this pandemic. You can learn about our relief fund. You can learn about that Google site that lists all the businesses doing takeout, and then you can buy a food box. So you can order directly from our website. We post menus every Saturday, and then that will quickly change. I would say just in general, stay up to date with this and other things that we're doing on our social media, specifically Instagram. But we'll post a menu, and then orders have to be put in by Tuesday and people pick up on Friday. This program has been incredibly popular. We sort of like allotted a couple days for, you know, us to sell those boxes, and they have pretty much been selling out within the next, like within the 24 hours that the menu is posted, or 48 hours, which is really amazing.
One of the motivations for us at SF Commons to spotlight San Francisco's nonprofits is because we know that our city is one of the wealthiest in the world. At the same time, we have such inequality and a high degree of financial and food insecurity, particularly now with the pandemic crisis. And I know certainly in my world and circles, people who are fortunate to have stable income, financially and housing stable, are looking for ways to help. And so by highlighting nonprofits and by also bringing awareness to places like Cocina and your food entrepreneurs, we hope that maybe those of us who are not going out to restaurants and spending the money out can then find those avenues like the food delivery box, or getting to know through the Google document that you created, getting to know some restaurants and some food providers who really could use that support right now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's such a challenging time right now for everyone. Like, it, you know, makes me emotional thinking about how much our entrepreneurs are impacted by all of this. But I think one of the really beautiful things that I've just been thinking a lot about is how I hope this, you know, there's this whole advocacy element, but I just hope that there's a shift in mindset about like mutual aid. Like all these GoFundMes that are going up, all these funds, you know, are really fun. It's really unfortunate that we have to, you know, that a tiny nonprofit is able to give that much of a relief stipend compared to what, you know, the federal government is able to provide as an option to these folks. And, you know, in terms of accessibility and all of that, it's unfortunate that we have to rely on that, and that we can't rely on our system to support the people that need support the most and that are impacted the most by this pandemic. But it's really amazing to see community show up for each other. Like, it's really amazing to see how much people love the entrepreneurs that are part of the La Cocina community. And yeah, just being able to help one another is a really beautiful thing. And I think it's one of the things that is getting everyone, certainly our community, through this.
Yeah, certainly one theme that has been really coming up in examining the work that nonprofits are doing, but just the volunteer, the mutual aid culture in general that is emerging even more strong from the crisis, is that changes have to be made to our city, to our community. What are some of the things that you hope will continue going forward or change going forward, whether it's support from the city, the system, or whether it's the continuing of people supporting each other, communities supporting each other, this culture of mutual aid? What would La Cocina like to see continue and change once the shelter orders are lifted?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good question. And I'm really glad that people are sort of pushing themselves to think about that and talk about that a lot more. I mean, it's crazy because, you know, La Cocina exists because our system is broken. It's not made to support the entrepreneurs that are part of our program. That's why we, you know, have our nonprofit, because there are so many barriers for women of color, for immigrants, you know, for Black and brown people to pursue economic freedom. I really hope that, you know, people keep talking about this idea of like normalcy and like when will go things back to normal. I'm glad people are sort of challenging that, and especially a lot of really wonderful industry leaders are sort of saying, well, wait a second, like normal for immigrants, for Black and brown people, for women in the food industry wasn't a suitable normal. It wasn't a just normal. We need to change things in order for this to become more equitable. And so I just really hope, I think that work was being done already to some extent, but I hope that conversation continues and we're able to put those people who are impacted most by this pandemic and that are impacted most by the system at the forefront of those conversations, because that's really the only way that we'll see some change.
Yeah, the crisis is highlighting where change is needed, and we're learning a lot about cooperation and aid and I guess equity. You do a lot of advocacy for equity at La Cocina. For people who are new to La Cocina or don't really know who the entrepreneurs are, haven't really heard about it, give us a little overview of like, who are some of the entrepreneurs? What is some of the food that you might find at La Cocina? You know, this restaurant, that cuisine, like just a little list.
Sure, yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, we have around 33 brick and mortar locations across the Bay. We have a lot in San Francisco. We have some in the East Bay. We have some in Marin. I mean, there is my mouth is like watering, and I'm just like totally like enamored just thinking about all the delicious food that exists within our community. We have, you know, El Buen Comer in the Outer Mission, which is an amazing restaurant. She was one of, I think she was in the first set of entrepreneurs that were first admitted into the incubator program. She has the most amazing chilaquiles, like my favorite in the city. Chilaquiles are also one of my favorite dishes ever. She has incredible sopes, just like a really amazing, homey Mexican brick and mortar. You really do feel like she is like cooking. I mean, this feeling exists across all the entrepreneurs and across all the businesses, but you really feel like they're cooking for you. They're like welcoming you into their home, into their space. And really they are. I mean, these businesses, like I mentioned earlier, you know, they do this because, you know, there's a necessity there. It's to pursue economic freedom, but they really do love feeding people, love bringing people together over, you know, their culture, their food. So there's like one of my just like favorite restaurants.
Yeah. There's a
right?
long, I know there's a list of really beloved restaurants in the community, and that's actually really shows that sort of age-old adage that food brings us together. You know, when you see the support that people are giving and the gratitude that you've told me the entrepreneurs have for the support that they're getting and the love that they get from their community. And just finally, so for people who are hearing this or who know about La Cocina and would like to help or get involved, how can people get involved?
Yeah, that's a great question. Glad you're asking it. We definitely, like I mentioned earlier, are relying on our community, where all of our efforts are 100% put towards this relief fund right now. You know, like I said, we're, you know, trying to be creative and sort of think of other channels and ways that we can support our entrepreneurs, but really that is the best way to help folks right now. That money goes directly to them. And we just actually ended a second round of funding, and we're able to provide a second relief stipend of almost $2,000. So the more donations we can get to that relief fund, the better. If you go to lacocinasf.org, like I said, everything is on the homepage. On the right side, there's a donate button that directs you to a page talking a little bit more about the relief fund and where you can donate. Also on the homepage, like I mentioned, is that Google site where if, you know, you're feeling hungry one day, you don't feel like cooking at home. I know we're all tired of cooking. You can go on that site and, you know, pick a business that you want to support and order takeout from.
Better choice than the corporate chains, I would say. You know, it's easy to make a difference living in the Bay Area with these small actions and helping.
Absolutely. Yeah, we always say that there's, you know, you have three chances. I'm totally going to butcher this. This is like on a little piece of collateral that we have, but you have 3 opportunities every day to like vote with your dollar. You know, supporting these small businesses, supporting people of color, Black-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and is incredibly important and speaks to the change that we all want to see in this industry and this economy. So yeah, that's one way. And then of course, food boxes. I really would recommend, if people are interested in that, because they are so popular, that they follow us on Instagram and also turn on post notifications. I'm not joking when I say that they sell out within like a couple of hours.
I've seen it on your social media. It looks mouth-watering and amazing.
Yeah, they're really amazing. I have only had the chance, like even I sometimes, you know, I'm so wrapped up in just like putting it out there, and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna order one, and then like within the next hour, the one that I want to order is sold out. But that is coming to the East Bay soon as well, which is really exciting.
Great. That's exciting. So people can follow along on your website and social media. Thanks so much for sharing everything La Cocina is doing and for all the work you do to support our community in San Francisco and the Bay Area. We and viewers will follow what you're doing and support however we can. Thanks, Consuelo.
Thanks so much for having me.